Hi there, I'm Marianne Taylor, aka the House Detective, and I research the history of houses for a living. Now, if you're anything like me and you've been watching the Boy Swallows Universe series on Netflix, you might be a little bit curious about some of the houses that make an appearance in this show. I couldn't help myself. I had to do some sleuthing to try and uncover where they actually filmed these houses. And what I've done here is put together a little bit of a list of the main houses that appear in the series, what they look like in the show, what they look like in real life, and also I've included a little bit of information about the style of each and where they sit in the architectural history of Brisbane, which is where the series was filmed. It's also my hometown in Queensland, Australia. I hope you enjoy watching. Let's start with Eli's house, which in the series and the book was located at Darra. However, they actually filmed at a house at Beenleigh, which is about 31 kilometres south of Brisbane. So this was a really common design of house in Queensland after the Second World War. A lot of social housing was built in this style. And so although they filmed at Beenleigh, this is a common style of house that you would also find in Darra. You can see as well for the series that they have actually added a front veranda and a front fence to the existing house. It's a style that's known as a conventional style or an austerity style. And this style of house was built all over Queensland after the Second World War in what's called the post-war period, unsurprisingly, which covers roughly about the mid-1940s into the late 1950s. So this style of house reflects the shortage of housing after the Second World War and also the lack of materials. So the term austerity style comes from the fact that they were basically building affordable homes with minimal decoration and ornamentation. So they were very stripped back designed homes. So as you can see, they're generally a basic square or rectangular shape with a hip roof, timber cladding, metal roof, standard floor plans. Very uncommon to find ones with a hidden secret room with a red telephone, however. Next up is Robert's house, Eli and Gus's dad's place where they go to live. And in the book, this was located in Bracken Ridge, which is a northern suburb of Brisbane. In the series, it was located at Darra. However, they actually filmed at Wavell Heights, which is another northern suburb of Brisbane. Now the house is not a standard style home, and I was trying to work out roughly when it would have been built. Based on the bay windows, which have a scalloped kind of timber design on the bottom, a flared skirt and cantilevered awnings, this dates the house at roughly the 1930s, and a number of other design features like the stucco finish and the small panes of glass in the windows also date from this era normally. So to double check that, I looked at some aerial photos, and sure enough, it's not there in the 1936 aerial, but it is there in the 1946 aerial. So that suggests that it was built in that time, and I would imagine it was built in the late 1930s. So like I said, it shows a few characteristics of homes that were being built in Brisbane during that era. Teddy's house. This house is actually located, where they did the filming, is actually located at Hemmant, which is a suburb about 11 kilometres to the east of Brisbane CBD as the crow flies. Now this house is it was an unusual house, and it's a little bit of a curious one, this one, because looking at it, I immediately thought that it looks a bit weird. So the left-hand side as you're looking at it looks like a much older house, maybe dating around 1900s, 1910s. The right-hand side, however, looks more like 1920s, 1930s. That's the side with the gable, and by gable I mean the triangular roof line. And the bay window and the infill on that gable both look very 1930s to me. So it's a bit of a curious one, and when I started to look into it a bit further, it actually doesn't appear on this block of land until the 1990s. So what that told me was that it had obviously been relocated to that block at that time. This is a really common practice here in Brisbane and Queensland. Tytus Bros's house and laboratory. This was filmed at the amazing Jimbour House, which is located about 187 kilometres northwest of Brisbane in a beautiful country town. And this suits being Tytus's house perfectly because it's a huge grand mansion that required a lot of money to build. It was built from sandstone, and it was actually a very early house. It was built from 1874 to 1877. It was designed by architects Suter and Voysey, and it was built for, wait till you hear this surname, Peter Joshua Bell. Can you believe that? Eli Bell, Peter Bell, amazing coincidence. Tytus's laboratory was filmed in a former aircraft hangar at Jimbo House as well, so you will remember seeing that dome-shaped building in the series. It's an absolutely gorgeous property and the grounds are spectacular as well, and the best thing is that you can visit this house. You can do a self-guided tour of the gardens, and you can also look out for when they are doing guided house tours, so that is now top of my to-visit list, that place. Bich and Darren Dang's house. Now this is probably the least Queensland looking house in the series. It's, as you can see, it's quite a modern home compared to the other ones, which are mainly timber and tin, the very traditional style that was built in Queensland. This house was actually at Robertson, which is a Brisbane suburb about 11k south of the city. Now this suburb was bushland up until the 1960s, and then it was a massive housing development, and when they were built, these homes were the ultimate in luxury and modern living, and anyone who had grown up in an old Queenslander or another style of timber and tin home in Brisbane was absolutely blown away by these homes. As part of this suburb, there was also a number of Martyr prize homes built in the area, and these were aspirational homes for most of us Brisbaneites who were living in the old style of homes. The Atari House, which was located in the Gap in the series, and it's where Lyle, Eli, Gus and Frankie go to pick up the second-hand Atari and end up getting a great deal thanks to Lyle. So this house is actually located in Chelmer, which is another Brisbane suburb. Now this suburb is known for its grand, what's called Queenslander homes, so high-set timber and tin, so corrugated iron roof, the tin, timber homes. They're always elevated on stumps, and they generally have big wraparound verandas like you can see in this house here. So it's a perfect example of the traditional style of housing in Brisbane and Queensland. When Frankie is released from prison, she goes to stay at the halfway house where the boys come and visit her. In the series, this was set at Morningside, but the house they used to film this was actually located at Maruka. Now, this was one of the trickiest houses for me to find. So for all of these, I just did desktop assessments and I haven't done any detailed research for them. But to find this one, I actually had to screenshot an image from the series, and just in the corner of it you can see that there's part of a church. So as soon as I saw that, I thought, okay, surely I can find where this church is. Long story short, I ended up locating where the church was, and sure enough there's a house right next door, so I was pretty chuffed with myself over that one. And the house, again, it's a traditional Brisbane and Queensland style home known as a double gable. Sometimes they're called Ashgrovian as well because there's a lot of that style of homes in the suburb of Ashgrove, but generally the architectural term is double gable or multi-gable homes. So they're characterised by the big wide gables that face the street. And interestingly enough, they're actually based on the American style, the California bungalow, which started to have the lower pitched roof and the street facing gables. This kind of house was commonly built in the 1920s and 1930s in Brisbane, and so it's a similar time period to when Robert's house was built, but as you can see, they're totally different styles of homes. Another house in the series that sort of is very similar in style to the halfway house was the drug house, as I've been calling it, where they go and get someone to test the quality of Lyle's goods. Now this house was another of the multi-gable style homes that was influenced strongly by the California bungalow style out of America. This house is a really good example of how it was adapted to the Queensland traditional style of building. So instead of being low set like many of the California examples were, These ones were raised up on stumps in Queensland, but they did cover the stumps in cladding, which was meant to replicate the sturdy, squat masonry uprights of the porches in the American style. So we sort of took that California bungalow style and adapted it to the materials and the traditional building style that were used in Queensland. This house was also a bit tricky to find because it was not right on the roadside. It's on farmland down near Jacob's Well, south of Brisbane. And the only way that I found this was by looking in the background of the scene in the series, and I could see sugar cane. And I knew that, although this has grown a lot in North Queensland, I knew that they'd filmed in South-East Queensland mainly, and I knew that they'd filmed other scenes at Jacob's Well. So I thought it has to be in the Jacob's Well area. So I then just got on aerial photos, had a look around, tried to find a property that had the sugarcane field and then the dams that are shown in the series as well. And eventually I found it and I was pretty happy with myself. Finally, the Skinheads House. Now, as soon as I saw, actually before I even saw this house, when I saw the undercroft area that they show in the scene just before they actually walk into the house, straight away I knew that this was filmed at a school. It's hard to put it in words, but anyone who has gone to a state school in Queensland will recognise this style of building. That's because they were a standard design that was produced over the entire era basically of school building in Queensland. They used timber and tin, just like our domestic architecture, because it was readily available and cheap to build. And most of these schools tended to be high set so that there was space underneath them as well. This space was always concreted, generally had concrete stumps in more recent areas, so straight away I recognised that. Then when they showed the exterior of the school, I knew that I was 100% right. These scenes were filmed at Pinkenba State School, and what's of particular interest about this site and that building that they used is it's actually quite an early example of a state school. This building was built in about 1875, and that's part of the reason that the whole site is actually heritage listed. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the filming locations for the houses in Boy Swallow's universe and learning a little bit more about their architectural history. Remember, I research houses anywhere in Australia, so if you'd like me to uncover the secrets of your house, please get in touch. If you'd like to leave a comment below about what your favourite house was that I've covered here, please do so. And remember to click like and subscribe if you'd like to hear more about my house history research. Thanks for watching.